Just talking musicals with you. Hello, I'm Lesley Anne Knight and welcome to our latest instalment of the Pajama Game story. In the last episode, we looked at how the most unlikely topic of a strike in a pajama factory in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, was beginning to take shape as a genuine Broadway musical contender. Aided and abetted by one of Broadway's most influential individuals, director, playwright, actor and producer Mr. George Abbott had set aside his misgivings about the subject matter and given the green light to two of his stage managers, Bobby Griffith and Harold Prince, who were throwing themselves at the chance of becoming Broadway producers in their own right. Abbott was directing and co-writing the book with the show's original award-winning author Richard Bissell. A young and ambitious dancer by the name of Bob Fosse had managed to get the role of choreographer under the watchful eye of Jerome Robbins, who was looking for a co-director credit for any choreographic help Fosse might need. And a songwriting duo by the name of Adler and Ross had won themselves the chance to write the music under the watchful eye of Guys and Dolls composer Frank Lesser, who had inspired them to write a quirky little number called Steam Heat. The Pajama Game opened for previews and tryouts at the Shubert Theatre in New Haven, Connecticut on the 10th of April 1954, with the two young producers Bobby Griffith and Hal Prince back working their old jobs as stage managers again, because until this show made enough money to pay back its investors, Griffith and Prince were on office expense salaries, and for the first few weeks would only see their new show from the wings each night. On opening night in New Haven, the quirky trio of Carol Haney, Pete Gennaro and Buzz Miller quite literally stopped the show at the beginning of the second act when they danced Steam Heat. But rather than praising his bright young choreographer and three gifted dancers for their stunning achievement, George Abbott's initial reaction was to try to take the number right out of the show. He was very upset about it, remembered Buzz Miller. He didn't like numbers to stop the show and he wanted Steam Heat taken out. In the end, Abbott was talked round by his co-director Jerome Robbins. Steam Heat was a showstopper because it was groundbreaking and it was going to stay right where it was. By the time the Pajama Game reached Boston, the show was ready for Broadway. Jerome Robbins came in to help tidy up some choreography and staged one number, but other than that, the show belonged to Fosse. Fosse had achieved his dream and choreographed his first Broadway show. The team also realised one other thing. If tryouts were anything to go by, this show was going to be a hit. The Pajama Game opened on Broadway at the St. James Theatre on 44th Street on the 13th of May 1954, pretty much 1 year after Bobby Griffith's phone call to his partner Hal Prince, urging him to get hold of Richard Bissell's new book about a strike in a pajama factory as fast as he could. And on that opening night, the two fledgling producers could be found in the wings, stage managing their show. In later years, Hal Prince recalled, "We heard the applause. We shared the showstoppers over the intercom system. That went well. God, didn't that go well?" and so on. When the curtain came down, we crossed the stage and embraced each other. Another thing about that opening night, they knew they had just enough in the kitty to keep them going for 1 week on Broadway. But by 9 a.m. the following day, it was all change. Buoyed up by rapturous reviews from leading theatre critics Brooks Atkinson, Walter Winchell and pretty much every single newspaper in town, a line of 400 people were already queuing at the box office that morning, securing the future of the show, which would go on to run not for 1 short week, but for a very respectable 2.5 years, was picking up 6 major theatre awards in its first year alone. Carol Haney and Steam Heat were the talk of the town, and everyone wanted to see this wonderful dancer taking Broadway by storm. As the show settled into the first few weeks of its run, it seems Haney's understudy was already plotting her escape route out of the show, certain that she'd never get the chance to go on, that Haney never missed a show. Theatre legend has it that the somewhat impatient young understudy had decided to hand in her notice as soon as she got to the theatre one evening about a month into the run in June 1954. But her plans didn't quite go to plan that evening when her subway train got stuck in a tunnel for half an hour, making her late for her half-hour call. And then, after running to the St. James from Times Square, she was greeted by what must have been the intimidating sight of Jerome Robbins, Bob Fosse and Hal Prince all lined up expectantly, agitated even, at the stage door waiting just for her. Not only was she late for her call, but they told her Carol Haney had torn a ligament and couldn't go on. And with no rehearsal other than moves she'd watched from the wings, she hurriedly got changed. And the young unknown dancer by the name of Shirley MacLaine was on. At the curtain call that evening, MacLaine went forward with Gennaro and Miller to take a bow, and she noticed the cast melt away from her and let her take the applause. She was 20 years old and just had her first real chance at playing a lead on Broadway. And it wouldn't be long before Hollywood producer Hal Wallace would sign her up to Paramount Pictures after catching that very same performance. Now, call me old-fashioned, but there's a message in there for all understudies. Right, that's it for this episode. Coming up, the Pajama Game hits the West End and Hollywood, so don't forget to tap subscribe to get an alert as soon as the next new episode drops. Thanks again for watching and see you soon.
Just talking musicals with you.